Right, breaking news, Mark. Yvette Cooper's walking up the street, but John Healey is the Chancellor. I can reveal that John Healey has been made Chancellor. Would you like to remain Foreign Secretary? Not answering that.
No.
I can tell you John Healey is Chancellor of the Exchequer, and I can tell you that was not expected.
No.
It was not expected. The whole discussion in Westminster was Ed Miliband going into that job. Then there was all this talk about it becoming Shabana Mahmood, but it's John Healey. We were right. If you're first up the street, you are.
Well, there you go. This is GB News Originals. I'm Emily Carver. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And do leave a comment. Let me know what you think.
Chancellor, but that is a curveball. As I was saying yesterday, I was told by someone that I really think did know that it was between Shabana Mahmood and Ed Miliband. But until it's done, it's not done. Yeah. And breaking news. John Healey, the Defence Secretary that quit government over the Defence Investment Plan, is the Chancellor. And I think if you are Mark Rutte in NATO at the moment, or President Zelensky in Ukraine,
you're delighted.
The Defence Secretary that has constantly talked about needing to properly invest in defence, becoming the Chancellor, you will be delighted about that. So what a surprise and shocker that one is. No one was talking about John. Oh, John Craig said he thought it might, to be fair.
Did he?
Yeah.
But, I mean, for him personally, just the
Incredible.
most massive job and big promotion.
Incredible promotion for John Healey. And as I was saying earlier, he is a safe pair of hands, hugely experienced. He was serving in the Treasury in 2001 to 2010 under Tony Blair and then Gordon Brown. So he's got chops on him when it comes to the economy. So John Healey is the Chancellor, and still in there is Ed Miliband, Shabana Mahmood, Yvette Cooper and Louise Haigh. So now what I'm thinking is you're going to have, does Shabana Mahmood in the Home Office, Ed Miliband move to Foreign? Does Yvette Cooper become Defence Secretary? Could there be some sort of configuration around that? And then also you've got Louise Haigh, of course.
Yeah, so we can show you now pictures of the new Chancellor and Andy Burnham inside Downing Street, and there we are. I suppose what you can say is a safe pair of hands, a grown-up.
Look at that.
A centrist. Who would have thunk it?
Well, I mean, that is quite the comeback for John Healey. As I said, he resigned as Defence Secretary. He was the Economic Secretary in a previous Labour government between 2002 to 2005. He was then promoted to Financial Secretary between 2005 to 2007. And hasn't that just shocked Westminster for months, for weeks? You've got something on you, Mark. For weeks, well, there's been a whole debate of, is it Ed Miliband? Then there was a bit of it, will it be Yvette Cooper? Then there was a bit of chat about would it be Wes Street, and that didn't last long. And then there was a sense that it was Shabana Mahmood. And actually, the Financial Times reported last week that it was likely to be Shabana Mahmood, as did the Times newspaper. So it wasn't just idle rumours. These were well-placed journalists talking to well-placed sources. And as I said, I was told that it was Shabana Mahmood or Ed Miliband, that they were the only two contenders, but it turns out they were not.
Well, the fascinating thing is when he would have been told, you know, when the decision was made.
Yeah.
But we may find that out.
I mean, he looks pleased as punch coming up the street, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, it's a
I mean,
big
look,
job.
just in terms of a bit of background as to how this decision has come about, I've got this, which is the Prime Minister's made clear he wants to make the economy work better for working people, and he wants an experienced, trusted figure to deliver that ambition. I'm told that Andy Burnham and John Healey have the same outlook, not only the need to maintain economic stability in the current fiscal rules, but on reindustrialisation, devolution, helping people with the cost of living. It goes on to point out that John Healey was the Economic Secretary to the Treasury and then the Financial Secretary under Gordon Brown for 5 years. The Prime Minister has said he wants to deliver more council homes. John Healey's a former housing minister, so will that experience help there? And of course, as Defence Secretary, he brought housing for the armed forces back into public ownership. He's also well respected on the international stage. So John Healey is the new Chancellor, and that really is quite an appointment. And look, when you think about it, Andy Burnham wants a safe pair of hands in the Treasury and someone really that he can direct. And he's chosen John Healey. Ed Miliband was the runaway favourite at the beginning, but there was a lot of opposition from unions, from business.
Well, there was all this stuff about spooking the bond markets, and this probably won't do that.
And also, Mark, I should say, this won't spook the bond markets, and also the whole bad blood briefing between Shabana Mahmood and Ed Miliband sort of made whoever was made chance if that was going to happen, it would have been controversial. And equally, Shabana Mahmood did want to stay at the Home Office. She didn't originally want to go and run the Treasury. She wants to stay as Home Secretary. Right. And so he has alighted on John Healey, well-heeled, extremely experienced. And as I said, the Prime Minister made it clear he wants the economy to work better for working people. He wants an experience.
Britain's new Chancellor is about to make Rachel Reeves's old mistake, and nobody in Downing Street seems to notice. There is a very particular kind of silence that falls over Westminster right before a Chancellor blows it. It happened to Rachel Reeves, and right now, in the corridors of the Treasury, that same silence is creeping back in. Except this time, it is gathering around a man who has been in the job for barely a few weeks. Welcome back to Britain Underneath, the channel that tells you what is actually happening in this country, while the front pages are busy telling you what somebody wants you to think is happening. If you are new here, hit subscribe now, because we are about to get into exactly why the Treasury's newest occupant is walking straight into the same trap that finished his predecessor. Let's dive in. John Healey did not exactly arrive at number 11 with a reputation as an economic heavyweight. He spent years at Defence. He is respected as a safe pair of hands, and by most accounts, he is a serious, careful operator. Which makes what is happening right now all the more baffling, because careful operators do not normally let speculation run wild for weeks on end. That is precisely what sank Rachel Reeves. She let the tax rumour mill spin for months before her autumn budget, and by the time she actually stood up at the dispatch box, confidence was already in the gutter. Investors had already started edging toward the exit, and the damage was done before a single policy had even been announced. The market does not wait politely for a budget speech. It reacts to the fear of what might be coming, and fear, once it takes hold, is brutally hard to put back in the box. Now look at where we are. A new Prime Minister in Andy Burnham, a new Chancellor in John Healey, and already, within weeks, the same low hum of speculation is starting up again. Backbench Labour MPs are agitating for more revenue from somewhere, anywhere. The usual chorus is back. A wealth tax, higher levies on the energy giants, more pressure on the banks, a fresh look at capital gains. Every profitable sector in this country seems to have a target painted on its back the moment it has a good quarter. And if Healey allows this drumbeat to build the way Reeves did, if he lets it run right up until the next fiscal event without getting a grip on the narrative, he will find himself in exactly the same hole she was in. Before we go further, if you want more of this kind of straight-talking breakdown of what is actually going on behind the Westminster Theatre, subscribing to Britain Underneath means you never miss it. It genuinely helps the channel keep doing this properly, so if you have not already, now is a good moment. Here is the uncomfortable truth nobody in government wants to say out loud. Britain does not have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem, and it has had one for years. Every time a Chancellor of any party starts eyeing up a new pot of money to raid, it is because the numbers on the spending side have already got away from them. Healey has inherited an enormous, ballooning national debt, a welfare and health bill that keeps climbing, and a backbench that treats any suggestion of restraint as a betrayal of Labour values. That is an almost impossible position to govern from. But caving to it and simply reaching for new taxes every time the sums do not add up is not governing. It is deferring the reckoning to next year and making the eventual reckoning worse. And here is the part that should really worry people. This is not just about Westminster politics.
That is jobs. That is investment. That is tax revenue walking out the door in slow motion. Every time a major company even floats the idea of shifting its primary listing to New York, it sends a signal to every other business watching. And once that psychology sets in across a market, it becomes almost impossible to undo. You cannot tax your way to prosperity if the people generating the prosperity have already decided this is not the place to do it anymore. This is exactly the kind of story that gets buried under 100 other headlines, which is why channels like this one exist. If that is useful to you, the subscribe button is right there, and it costs nothing, but genuinely keeps this kind of coverage going. There is also a harder number that almost nobody wants to say on camera. A relatively small slice of Britain's highest earners contributes a wildly disproportionate share of total income tax revenue. That is simply how the system is structured. It means that every time a handful of that group decides the juice is no longer worth the squeeze and relocates, quietly, without a press conference, the shortfall does not just vanish. It gets redistributed downward onto everyone else in ways that rarely get explained honestly to the public. Third, and this is the one nobody in Labour wants to hear, he needs to actually look at spending, properly, honestly, including the uncomfortable areas like sickness and incapacity-related costs, rather than treating every serious conversation about reform as some kind of attack on the vulnerable. Those are two very different things, and conflating them is exactly how Reeves ended up boxed in with no good options left. None of this is inevitable. Chancellors have turned around bad starts before, but it requires a level of political courage that very few people in that job have shown in recent memory. And right now, the early signs from the Treasury are not encouraging. The clock on the next fiscal event is already ticking, and every week Healey stays quiet while his backbenchers make the running is another week the market spends pricing in the worst-case scenario. Stay with us on this one, because we will be tracking exactly how this plays out over the coming weeks, and there is a lot more happening underneath the surface of British politics that the mainstream coverage simply is not telling you. If this kind of analysis is useful to you, take a breath, stick around, and subscribe to Britain Underneath before you go, because that is genuinely what keeps this channel able to keep digging into stories like this one.
Britain is standing at a fork in the road right now, and almost nobody is talking about it honestly. One path leads to a government that finally gets serious about the numbers. The other leads to a repeat of exactly the mistake that ended the last Chancellor's tenure. Which one we get is being decided right now, quietly, in meetings most of us will never see. Make sure you are subscribed, because we will be here to break down exactly what happens next, and there is always more going on beneath the surface than anyone in Westminster wants you to see.